All right, good evening and welcome to our virtual bike path wayfinding study public meeting. My name is Alex and I'm here with members of the Lake County Division of Transportation and Corbin Design who have been working on this study for some time. Joining us is Matt, Kevin, and John from LCDOT, and Jeff, Moira, and Margaret from Corbin Design. Before we get into the purpose of tonight's meeting, I'll briefly explain the flow of what's going to happen tonight. At any time, you can ask questions or provide comments. So to test it out right now, please type hello in the comment section. In a moment, I'll kick it over to Matt, who will discuss the purpose of the study. And then Corbin Design will provide an on-screen presentation with a ton of info to share. I'll be monitoring the comment section for your questions and comments, and we'll forward them over to our presenters tonight. Throughout the presentation, please ask questions. We will definitely answer them. The more questions and comments we get, the better flow and the longer this meeting will last. So, all right, I'm gonna turn off my video and we'll kick it over to Matt to get this meeting started.
All right, thanks, Alex. Again, like Alex said, my name is Matt MD. I'm the project manager here at Lake County DOT for this project. I'd like to welcome everyone to this online platform that is available to us here, given the current situation that we are in. This bike path wayfinding project started about a year and a half ago or so, and we're really just trying to bring awareness to different areas around the bike path and try to get people to destinations that are near the bike paths and learn where these bike paths go and explore basically the county's system. So this project has had a lot of contributions in these year and a half process that we've been going through. So just want to take a moment to thank everyone that had contributed to the project. We had a lot of municipality folks that contributed, including the Lake County Forest Preserve, Village of Grays Lake, Libertyville, Lake Bluff, Beach Park, Mundelein, Fox Lake, Gurnee, Highland Park, in addition to the Bike Club of Lake County and county staff, not only here at the DOT, but also at the Health Department and the Planning, Building, and Development group. So we're excited for this project to kick this off. And as an unveiling today, we are sort of treating it as a kind of kickoff to this warm weather we've been all having here. I know I saw a lot of people out on the bike path yesterday, out on the North Shore path when I was checking out the signs. So it's very evident that people are getting out and using the path. So that's what we like to see. Just wanted to share a couple quick stats that we have unearthed here. We have some bicycle and pedestrian counters out on the North Shore path. And I was astonished to see how many people are actually using the path more here. We took some counts back in May of 2018, and then we did some counts this May of 2020. And the bicycle and pedestrian usage on the bike path near Route 21 or Milwaukee Avenue in Libertyville is up almost 200%. So there's definitely a lot of traffic on the bike path, which is great to see. Also, there's almost a 350% increase in the pedestrians using the North Shore path out near Route 41. So everybody out there in Lake Bluff is getting out and using the path as well. So we're really excited to have this opportunity to present to you guys and to show you guys the bike path wayfinding project. And with that, I'll just hand it over to Jeff from Corbin Design.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, I'd just like to introduce my team. Hi, I'm Jeff Frank. I'm the lead designer. I'm with Corbin Design. With me, we have Maura Mist. She's the project manager. And we have Margaret. She's a designer on the project as well. We are the wayfinding team. We were on site, it's exactly a year ago right now, to conduct a stakeholder information gathering meeting. Some of you may have attended this. This was also broadcasted via Facebook Live as well. In that case, we also had an in-person meeting where we gathered information, had folks come out and evaluate some maps and some examples, some photos, and provided contributions during the course of that meeting. We've taken that information and we've distilled that down into a set of recommendations and design direction. Today we're going to be unveiling those designs and talk about test and evaluation of the principles and ideas that we have developed. So with that said, I've got a brief presentation to go through, and we are going to then talk about how you can provide additional input. This meeting obviously is one way to ask questions and provide your thoughts, but what we're hoping to do is have you all actually experience the test route, see the signs in person, and provide information via survey. survey is the best way we can kind of distill all those results down into our recommendations. I'll mention this a second in the presentation, but in our previous online survey, we had 625 respondents provide information, which is quite a bit of data for us. So with that said, I'd like to thank all our hosts, John, Kevin, Matt, and Alex for setting this all up for us. And without any further ado, I'm going to jump right in here. So just really quickly, we're going to summarize a couple of things just as far as people's understanding of what wayfinding is, just in case you weren't at that previous meeting. So for us, we define wayfinding as direction for people in motion. This is very important on a trail segments because obviously this is a route we want to keep people in motion, right? Whether you're walking or biking, we want you to be able to understand where you're at, where you're going, and where exit routes, additional cross paths, where they're directing to as far as destinations goes. We don't want you to be stopped and become disoriented. The only time we really want you to sort of stop is starting your journey, maybe at a trailhead kiosk where there's going to be a map, where there's a dense amount of information that you can kind of spend some time absorbing and developing a plan for your trip. Trail systems for us are important in a number of ways. I mean, they have to function as a utility and as a safety measure, but we want to be sensitive to the fact that these are along scenic routes. We want to experience, when people are on the trails, we want them to experience nature and the environment. So for us, when we develop these programs, there's a little phrase that we use. We want them to be apparent when you need them and transparent when you don't. So this is going to be important as you see the system we've developed. We want it to be there when you're looking for it. So consistent heights and colors and shapes. And then obviously, as you understand the system, you be more familiar with it. Maybe you're a local or a resident that accesses the trail all the time. We want those signs to kind of fade back at that point. You know where you're going, but just in case, maybe you're pushing the trail further out, or you've taken a spur or a segment you haven't been on before. The signs will be there to help you and help guide you and provide additional information. At the beginning of this process, we developed some initial goals we wanted to accomplish here. They're broad in scope, and we'll talk about how we refine those and provide a specific detail. But this is really where we started at. Obviously, the connecting towns, destinations, and other transportation options. So this is really key important. It also ties into a broader transportation plan for the future. We want to make sure the trails are part of that. We want people to use them for recreation, but also for commuting if possible. We want to connect as much of the county as we can through these segments. We know they're disconnected in a lot of areas. Obviously, that's going to change and grow over time, and there's going to be more connectivity. So we want this system to be a way to connect all those independent segments. One of the important things for us is we always want to encourage exploration. So it's easy to get on the trail segment that you're familiar with, the one you always use. Maybe it's the one you use for exercise, and that's great. But we also want you to have the opportunity and feel comfortable and empower you to find more trail segments, to go further, to go try an area that you haven't tried before, with the understanding that there's a safety in that we're gonna tell you how far it is, how to get back to where you started from. That's how we want to really encourage exploration. Identify and orient users to the extensive network of paths and trails. So this is important for us, obviously, as a county-wide system. And this is why it's important to start. When we're starting small, we want this to grow. We want the identity meaning the way the signs look and the way they function to work in the trail segment, test segment that we developed now, so that we can grow it county-wide. So there's a consistency in the way the information is presented and used. So when you go to one part of the county, and maybe it's the one in your backyard, the trail that you use all the time, you understand how the signs work. But then when you go to a completely different part of the county, maybe an area that you don't frequent very often, and you get on the trails, the signs are going to function the same way for you. So there's that confidence in how the signs work. Obviously, any system needs to be flexible and cost-effective to maintain. And we have a unique opportunity here to have the county sign shop produce these signs. They developed the test route signage, and I want to reach out and just say personally thank them for their hard work in creating, manufacturing, and installing all these signs in time for the kickoff of this test route. Absolutely. And they did a fantastic job, but they're also a tremendous resource in the development and refinement of these signs. They provide this really unique opportunity for us to have a mobile testing platform, meaning that we're putting these signs in right now. And if we see something we make adjustments on, we can immediately go back to them and help them and use their experience to help us refine the system and fine tune it to make it perfect. I touched on this before, but we want to create a consistent identity for the Lake County trails. You'll see the identity and the branding that we've developed and integrated into the system. It's layered, so it includes the shape of the sign, the colors, even an icon that will encourage people to explore and convey the sense or the concepts that this is an accessible trail system. It's for all users. So really quickly, the project milestone. So it was really interesting. We talked about this with the team this morning. So we started this off, we were on site in May 2019, and here we are, May 2020, we've got test route signs in the ground to look at. So in between then, so in our first May 2019, we had the community open house, we had the stakeholder meeting, we had various representatives, Matt alluded to this or mentioned this as well, from the county municipalities provide information for us. We want buy-in from those folks as well. We want to make sure that the system works for everybody. July of 19, we developed and we consolidated our findings and recommendations and developed a presentation and presented that to the core team. In September, we developed some design concepts, visually representing the signs in different ways, and presented that to a smaller core team and some stakeholders to get initial feedback to help us refine the final designs. We were back in January of 2020 to do site work. So we walked this trail back and forth. We looked at all the opportunities. We looked at the existing signs, and we made sure that we're plotting locations and destinations and information that's going to be accurate and that is actually going to function in this test segment as if it's an actual real segment. We are right now, well, in March, we had stakeholders provide final input. So there was another set of revision and edits there. And right now we're in May. So 2020, test route signs are installed and ready for user input. So really that's the core of this meeting today. If I was gonna lay down kind of what our ultimate goal for this meeting here is really to inform you about the test route signs that are out there, provide some background information about those signs in the program, and then encourage you to go out, if at all possible, and experience that segment, see the signs in person, and then provide information to us via a survey, an online survey, so that we can gather as much possible information as possible about very specific pointed questions that are going to help us refine this system and refine the signs that are out there right now, so that we ultimately can issue back a final report, a document that has our specific recommendations and designs that cover for basically the entire county. So some interesting information that we were able to pull from the initial survey. So we call it the community engagement survey. Again, we had 624 respondents. Some of the things conclusions that we reached directly related to the data that we received. So 50% of folks use the trail system or a segment from it at least at least once a week. So that's a good number. It was interesting to know that 96% of people use it for recreation and exercise. It's great. People are healthy. We understand that. We want to encourage that as much as possible. And we've built in some elements that I think that are going to support those folks specifically. And we'll talk about that as we get to the designs. The other key thing for us was understanding that 77% of folks were cyclists. So this is really a heavily oriented bike system, but we want to make people understand or aware that this is much more than a bike system, right? Pedestrian friendly on a number of different levels. Walkers, it's handicap accessible. A lot of the segments are. We want to encourage, I mean, there's dog walking, roller skating, all sorts of other activities that we want to encourage on the routes. But we want to make sure that our signs are working for those cyclists. So understanding that they have different needs than walkers, specifically the rate of speed that they're traveling, the information needs to be legible to those folks too. So that really played into a size and scale, the contrast levels, the fonts that we're using in the signs. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the designs themselves. So the two statistics on the far right-hand side, 31% of respondents use maps for information, and then 38% respondents use signage for information. So again, this plays heavily into the physical signs that we're putting into the environment and the type of information that we're presenting on those signs. So as part of that, creating a unique identity and tying the entire system together, what we did is we created a brand refresh. So instead of it just being the Bike Lake County, we wanted to make sure that we were creating an identity and brand that could be all encompassing of all the users. And so what we've done here is we've developed the icon and branding that you see on the right-hand side and rebranded it Explore Lake County as opposed to just Bike Lake County. And as part of that icon, you can see the symbols that are in the sort of gradated field off to the right-hand side of the biker. And inside there, we're showing all of the other users. We want to make sure people understand that this is a fully accessible system. So for us, process and next steps, we just want to give you a sense of where we're at and where we're going with this system right now. We've already received community input. We've already developed the wayfinding plan and design. Right now, we're in the top orange, the middle orange bar, I'm sorry. Evaluate test route, right? We're asking for that input right now. With the data we receive from you all, we will refine refine the wayfinding plan. So there may be things that we change. There may be things that we alter and edit. Hopefully it's all fine tuning from this point forward, but we're open to all suggestions because we want to make sure we get this right. And in the end, we're going to create a final county-wide standards manual. So taking all of our recommendations, designs, and turning it into basically an instruction manual of how to implement signage wayfinding or wayfinding signage on trail segments throughout the county. So talked a lot about the test route. Where is it? What is it? It is just south of downtown Libertyville, and it is it is currently the North Shore path that goes from Butterfield to St. Mary's Road. So within that segment, from end to end, you'll see the replacement of the existing sort of standard engineer grade signage, and it's been replaced with, you'll see, and we'll show you the designs here in a second, the wayfinding signs. So along the way, you'll also see some informational signs that communicate the survey links to it. So even folks that are kind of just finding this segment on their own, maybe they haven't even heard of the program or haven't joined us in any of our meetings, they come across the segment, they'll be able to see some information signs out there that tell them to please help us evaluate the program as well. What do you think, team? Is there anything here that we need to cover and just discuss as far as the test section that our viewers might need to know?
I can chime in a little bit here. I think the test section was a great test section. We have, downtown Libertyville right off the North Shore path. We have the Forest Preserve right there. There's a number of little offshoot trails. Libertyville High School is there, Butler Lake. So I think the test route that's how we chose the test route. We wanted to kind of be, representative of all sorts of different situations that we could come up with for signing different things.
Yeah, excellent, Matt. So you're exactly right. So this segment for us, our Lake County folks selected it, but they picked a great section because it has a density of destinations for us to direct to. So yes, you can see the dotted lines that are heading up to the top of the map that are connecting to downtown Libertyville. So yes, we're hoping to take advantage, bring folks on and off the trail by directing to the trail, from the trail to downtown. And then we're also directing to the Des Plaines River Trail as well. So directing to a crossing, another segment of a trail system. Along the way, you'll see we'll talk about how we're judging distance and how we're also directing to some other destinations that connect into this segment. So all in all, this has the density of, and I would say as of right now, it has all the sign types currently in our system, meaning that it has information, it has guide, it has regulatory. So we're treating this and we're encapsulating this and treating this as basically a microcosm of larger trail segments. Maybe as the segments expand in the future, they may not have as many dense signs as this one segment does here. So we're trying to consolidate as many sign types in here as possible to really get feedback on how they function.
Hey, Jeff, if I can jump in too. We do have a couple of questions coming through from Facebook. One person asked if they've seen a lot of bike stores that have been sold out lately with the COVID response going on. So they've asked if we've seen a number of or this reflected in our counts for bike users in the area. So we did have some counts that we looked at today. So the answer to that is yes, and quite significantly. They've gone up about 200%, almost 365 cyclists per day, actually at 21 in the North Shore, which is right within this test section here. And then another person, Barb, asked about the North Shore Trail section. Is that the test route? And she just saw new signs up there this morning, and it was perfect timing. You just jumped into the slide right here and started talking about the test section. So to Barb, yeah, that's exactly right. Those are the signs that we're testing out. So please, for yourself and anyone else, please jump on and take the survey and give us your feedback and input.
Excellent. So we've covered the process. We talked about the test route. I think for us, the next step here is to talk about the sign types in the system. So obviously you're going to see these when you explore the route, but just in case you don't have an opportunity to explore the route yourself, or prior to going there, let me show you where you're going to see. So we've got a number of different sign types for different functions, right? And they all have a sort of a specific role. This is the DOT, so Department of Transportation on-road vehicular guide. So right now we currently don't have any of these located because we're treating the test section is a closed path section. It's not an on-road system. But as the system expands, there will be opportunities and there will be situations where bikers will be in a designated bike lane along a road, in that case, we need to have signs that meet the DOT requirements, which means that they're slightly larger than the signs we have currently on our paths. So this is really, and as you can sort of see the silhouette, there's a person standing at the bottom, the kind of shoulders and head are visible. So you can get a sense of the size and scale of these signs. These could be mounted to existing poles, but all in all, these would be really meant for on-road segments of paths. As part of the system located at trailheads, we've developed a trailhead kiosk map sign type. This is really important for us because this is really that jumping off point for the system. So what we want to do here is make sure that we understand that folks are using this as a planning tool, right? So it indicates along this map where you're at, shows the segment, the trail, shows the distance, shows some destinations around there, and then also provides the sort of the foundation for the rest of the system. So once you see a trailhead like this, you'll see the size, the silhouette, the colors, the branding, the logo at the top. At the bottom, it identifies what trail segment you are currently on. And so when you see one of these, know that the subsequent signs along that system will look something like this. So visually the same. This is the typical guide signs that you're going to see along the test route. So they are carry the branding. They also confirm the trail name. This is in case you step onto the trail at a different segment, maybe not an official trailhead, maybe it's an unofficial one, maybe it's from a neighborhood. You'll know the trail name when you step onto it. We have guide information, so destinations listed here. Generally, there's going to be, you can see the sign types vary as there are a number of destinations. From the left to the right, 3 destinations, 2 destinations, 1. So we're trying to keep the signs as compact as possible to provide that. So when they provide information, we're not having a lot of open space on them. The other part is going to be the distance indicator. So that number in the bottom on the sort of right-hand sides of the panels, that indicates in miles the distance to that destination. So again, if you're looking for on the first sign here on the left-hand side, if you're looking for the Des Plaines River Trail, you know that it's 2.4 miles from that location. And as you see subsequent signs after that, you see the number decrease, 2 miles, mile and a half, understanding then that you're, covering that distance. We also want to make sure that our regulatory mile markers and trailblazers are part of the system as well. So you'll see some signs along this segment. We've utilized this narrow format directional sign that says North Shore Trail. This is really to keep the signs as slim as possible, keep the overhang off for some locations that are susceptible to overhang. We also want to make sure that we have clear and legible mile markers. The segment does have current mile markers right out there right now. The segments are half-mile increments. That's one of the questions that we're going to be asking folks. to help us understand what increment works best for them. And that really goes back to those folks who are using this for recreation and exercise. We're telling you we're giving you mile markers out. And I think the segment's 1.5 miles, I believe. So if you're using that as a distance marker, if you're running, jogging, sprinting, you'll know you're covering 1.5 miles because we're going to tick off the half-mile increments for you. Our regulatory signs, there are pure utility regulatory signs out there right now, like stop signs and things like that. That's not changing. Those need to stay and have their high visibility and function the way they do. But there are some locations where we want to kind of turn the volume up on the safety. And really that comes to play in situations where we're trying to encourage people to not cross across the street, but to actually utilize an intersection. So in some key locations, we want to communicate a message to folks, like the one that's shown here on the screen right now, which says, please go to the intersection, and then we point to the direction of the nearest intersection for folks. We want to communicate in a fun way, an interesting way, a way that's going to catch their eye that this is a serious situation here. You know, we don't want people to get hurt, and we're directing to the nearest safest place to cross.
Hey, Jeff, can I just stop you for a sec? We got a few questions rolling
Yeah.
in. So,
Shoot.
real quick, from Verena, why was Libertyville chosen as a test site? Like we mentioned before, you know, we picked Libertyville as a test site because there's a lot of different aspects to the North Shore path right there in Libertyville. We have, you know, Libertyville High School is right there, which generates a lot of traffic, or I guess did generate a lot of traffic before pre-COVID. We also have Butler Lake up there with then the parks that are up there, as well as downtown Libertyville, which is a nice attraction, you know, restaurants and drinking establishments, things like that, as well as the connection to the other major trail, which is the Des Plaines River Trail within the test section that is maintained by the Lake County Forest Preserve, as well as Middle Fork Savannah, Middle Fork Forest Preserve is just off to the east there. So we thought this was a good representation of you know, a path that we could have a lot of different experiences on.
And Matt, I think one more thing for that too. Another reason we chose this path too, there are a lot of paths in the county that have similar characteristics as well, but this one's very close to our office, which allows us to quickly go out, check a section, adjust a sign, run back out there. We made a change this morning. It's only 5 minutes away from the office. Go out there, make the change, come back.
Yeah,
so we want to make sure that we can be more flexible here before we roll it out throughout the county.
Yeah, I think from our standpoint at Corbin Design, it was really a unique experience for us to work directly with the sign shop. So with the sign shop being so close in proximity to this test trail, it's a perfect combination for us to use this highly dense trail. You know, it's like 1.5 miles long, to have all these different sign types on there. And as John just said, to have the ability to make some changes on the fly right before, so we're not spending a lot of time driving back and forth these areas. But the plan here for us, as our final deliverable to the county, is to have a plan with guidelines and directions on how to implement this countywide when the county is ready for it, when they are ready to begin the expansion.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know that's kind of what Verena was also getting at, was will you expand the test section to have more and serve other communities? And the answer is yes. We're just testing it out on the test section first. We want to see how the signs look, how they function, and then I would envision that we're going to be rolling this out as it's a little bit of much of an undertaking to roll it out all at once on all of our trails, because we do have a lot of trail system in the county that we maintain. So I would envision that we'd be rolling it out in segments moving forward. So.
And I think it's important to understand that this is a proof of concept right now. We're looking to you, the users, to help us improve this. We don't think that this is what we're showing out there is 100% complete and final. We know that we're going to be making adjustments based on input that we receive from this survey.
Yeah, let me just add, so as far as the idea that the concept that we're expanding this countywide, so we're taking that into consideration as we're developing the sign types. You'll see on the screen right now, underneath the overall trail system guide signs, you'll see these, we're calling them placards right now currently, and those will help identify the individual jurisdictions that some of these trail segments will be in, so that you'll have an understanding of who's responsible for that trail segment, who's maintaining it, what cities and towns you're traversing through as you're using these trail segments. So there will be a way for you to understand you're part of a broader system, but then also reflect a little bit of the uniqueness of the individual areas.
And to go back and answer a question from Robert a little bit ago, yes, this is being recorded and will be shared on Facebook after this is done.
Thanks, Maura. And also, let's see, next question from Vanessa here. What are the next steps and long-term vision for expansion of bike paths in Lake County? So when we're doing our roadway projects and things like that, we're always looking to make connections and fill in gaps. And we do have a gap list that is prioritized. We also go by our 2040 non-motorized transportation plan, which sets out kind of a long range vision for future bike paths in Lake County. So you can find that on our website. And if you have any trouble with it, you can reach out to me and I can definitely get you the info.
Yeah, then she had a follow up there too in terms of, getting what can residents and municipalities like Hawthorne Woods do to expand bike paths. So as Matt mentioned, you can reach out to us. We can give you our email addresses, or we have a general email address for bike@lakecountyil.gov that comes through, and you can request, if there's particular gaps or locations in general you're kind of referring to. As Matt mentioned, we're working with Hawthorne Woods on a Gilmer Midlothian project where we're installing bike paths and partnering up with the village there. But yeah, the best way is either reaching out through your village or directly to us if you have specific locations on the county highways, and we can add those to our list and give them consideration.
Yeah, and so the sign types that we've developed here can aid in that in a certain degree. So even if the segments, they're unconnected, but there's a roadway that connects them, potentially those on-road signs could help stitch together some of those segments. So yes, in an ideal situation, there'd be more continuous routes and paths through the county, and in the future, there will be more and more of that. But in order to help utilize and create longer routes for folks right now, individual segments can be stitched together with some of those on-road signs to create and have an understanding of, if you want to go much further distance, the wayfinding signs will help you navigate some of those on-street routes. So we've got on the screen right now a couple of examples, photographs of the signs that are out there right now, just to show you the signs in the real world environment. Kind of see this is what you're going to see when you're out there. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, ultimately what we're trying to do is get folks to go to the survey. So this is the survey information here. There's a couple ways you can access it. There's a link here at the bottom. Obviously, there's a QR code. All that information is presented on the physical signs as well. So if you don't capture that information here, if you actually encounter one of the signs out there on the endpoints, and I think in the middle as well, there'll be a sign that has this information on there too. Survey's quick. I think we've timed it at 2 minutes, 3 minutes. 3 minutes. I think it's 15 questions.
18 questions, so it looks a little bit more daunting than it really is, but it's not. It's quick, it's easy. Some of the, the initial questions are, how did you use it? Were you on foot or were you on a bike? And then we're asking for your feedback on even the design and the legibility, the text height. Does it make sense? Is it too small? Is it, too big? Is it just right? That's the kind of input that we're looking for. We do have a series of questions over here that I want to make sure that we are addressing. So we've had a couple questions about mapping. So one of the final deliverables of this project is an updated map standard. So that's something that we're starting to work on with the county. You'll see a segment of that on the trail kiosks out there right now. So Elliot, to answer your question, there may be an opportunity to maybe highlight some of those better cycling routes on the maps. So, right now the current map is convoluted and difficult to read. So we do have an opportunity to improve the legibility of that and make these connections. See, yes, there is an opportunity to indicate where public restrooms are. We typically use the universal symbol for restrooms to identify which direction those are for users. That can also be identified on the map kiosks as well. And then from Lake County Board Member Ann Main, what are the partners saying about how they will connect with us and their signage? We had a lot of conversations early on with the different municipalities about how they can be included. And that was why those medallions were included as part of this, so that users can understand where they are on the trail and that the experiences they're having are within this community. So I think there was a lot of excitement about how we can coordinate those two entities, the county system and bringing some identification to the actual municipality in which the trail resides.
Yeah, I think we had some really good conversations about that. So from the standpoint of a user of a trail segment, it's important to have the information communicated consistently. So the messages, the size, the legibility, the location, so that you have a continuous journey, right? Direction for people in motion, right? So having a lot of differently designed systems all to work together presents some issues, some challenges, obviously. But with this, what we wanted to do is give those municipalities the opportunity to have a ready-built, tested, vetted system to invest in, to be part of. So this way, they can be, if they have a segment that they want to implement signage on, this standards manual will be something that they can go to. So the county's already made the investment in making sure that the signs work, they function. In fact, the sign shop's producing the signs. So there's an opportunity to go to the sign shop to have those signs made. So that is the idea, is try to make it easier for areas to implement a true wayfinding system that's going to help their individual segments, but also the user understand that they're part of a broader system.
Mm-hmm. And I think that goes to David's question, asking about, will the signage be consistent? That's the hope. And we did meet with the Forest Preserve early on, and there's an idea of consistency, not necessarily in the looks. I believe that the Forest Preserve will be keeping their signage system, but from a logic and a language standpoint, we want to make sure that we're communicating the same information consistently so that we're not confusing the users, that this trail segment is called the same thing here and there. That's going to make sure that there's a cohesive experience from one to the other. We want to make sure that they complement each other. Jeff and Margaret, I think there's a question here from Lisa, and I think you guys should take this. I'm curious about the design. Can you say anything about why you incorporated a 3D look as opposed to just a square?
Yes, good question. Absolutely. So as part of our development of the design, one of the core things we were trying to do was create a unique look. So the look extends beyond just the graphics, but to the shape itself. And what we're trying to do is create a unique silhouette. So, well, why is that important? Because we want these signs to be differentiated from other square signs in the or rectangular signs in the environment. So when you see this sign, even if you're at a different angle, you see the backside, you see it from a distance where you can't quite see the text yet, you see that shape and you have an understanding that that silhouette means it's part of this wayfinding system. Mm-hmm. So the sign's not designed to be three-dimensional in terms of its look. These cuts are meant to create that unique shape. And then the graphics support those shapes. You can see that big white line that goes around the far left side. You can sort of see here now in the environment, that really creates that sort of strong border and helps that sign, that little highlights that edge and helps it stand out in the environment a little bit more too. So I know some other folks have asked about the 3D element of it. That was not an intentional thing that we were trying to do.
Well, I think it may have been. So we knew that we had to make these signs buildable for the Lake County DOT. So we wanted to work with their in-house shop, but we wanted, as Jeff said, we wanted to make them look unique. So we did want to add some dimension to an otherwise flat sign, just to give it a little more visual interest.
I'll jump in here too. There's a question from Ken. Has this Lake County transportation effort been talking with the Lakeshore Bike Path Study undertaken by North Chicago, Waukegan, Beach Park, and Zion? And yes, we have been in touch with the group doing that. I've spoken with their consultant a few times. They're not as specific as coming up with signage and things like that, but in speaking with their consultant and with Village of Beach Park early on, we welcome these opportunities. They're creating sort of, I'll say, like hubs of interest hubs, kind of up in that north area of county there. So our plan would be to unveil, as we roll these signs out, to direct people to those hubs that they're identifying right now with their plan. So that's kind of in the works there. So.
A couple other questions here. This is one from a little bit back. I don't know if it was addressed or not, but Brian asked, are the paths available in Google or Apple Maps to assist with navigation? That's actually a good question because I think they are. A lot of our paths are regional trails. So I know in Google, I use Google quite a bit, and I think a lot of them are on there. I'm not too familiar with Apple Maps. I don't know if anyone else has done that, used that before, but I think a lot of the navigation systems do have the maps on there. But a good point that we heard from the stakeholder groups, we had a discussion on this, is that there are riders that do like to use their technology, and they'll go on and they'll find out where they are with GIS, and they'll kind of pin their position and find out where they're trying to go. And then we also heard from a lot of folks that they want to put the phone away, they want to disconnect and just get out and go for a ride and kind of use the natural environment and the signage. So I know that wasn't necessarily the intention of the question there, Brian, but it's a good point that there's each rider wants a little bit different experience when they're getting out there riding. So some people are all for the technology, and some people just want to kind of get out and go for a nice little ride and kind of disconnect. So it's a great question. There was another one here from Anastasia asking if there's a certain plan for connecting the Millennium Trail and Round Lake over 134. We have been involved in some discussions. I think the Forest Preserve is leading that effort. I think the Millennium Trail is a system that's a priority to them and trying to close up. But that section there is pretty complicated, as you alluded to. It's got 34, which is 134 is a state route. There's a railroad crossing there, and it goes through multiple jurisdictions. I think Avon Township and Round Lake and such. So we have been involved in some discussions there. So it is in the works. It's on multiple agencies, kind of long range plans, but it's in process and there are discussions going on, but hasn't been fully worked out or finalized yet. But
And Kevin, there's another question from Joanne. You might want to pick up. You probably can answer as well, regarding the west end of this trail and connecting it to the Millennium Trail by Monoline High School. So no, we've closed that. The part of that gap we've added is a path from Monoline High School back east to US 45, but that gap on Holly Street from US 45 back to this North Shore path is not.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a great one.
But that is currently a discussion with the Village of Monoline. So if you have any more info on that.
Yeah, they're looking at actually doing a roadway project there. I think they have a consultant on board to do that east end of Hawley Street, and then that connection from the Millennium Trail to North Shore Bike Path would be considered as part of that. So that's a great one there. It's a gap on our system and identified in our 2040 plan too. And I know they're definitely excited to get that gap closed out too. So. But this, the signage, as Jeff alluded to before, there's opportunity to kind of stitch in some of these areas where you may have a gap and some trails that kind of go off road and through maybe some of the neighborhood streets and then back onto a trail. So it could be addressed maybe in the near term too, through some on-street signage and things like that to help clarify that area until the roadway improvement and the path can be filled in.
Jump in about the snow removal there, Kevin. Generally from Kate, who's responsible for maintaining the paths, for instance, snow removal. So a lot of the Lake County DOT does not plow our paths. We typically will look to a municipal partner to kind of partner up with that to plow, to maintain those pathways. And paths that we own, typically we'd be responsible for capital maintenance, things like that, replacing, a bad section of asphalt or things like that. But some of the smaller maintenance items, such as snow removal and stuff, we usually look to a municipal partner to kind of help us out with that.
And that's we leave that up to the municipality if they choose to do that or not. Some choose not to leave it open for like cross-country skiing as well. So it's kind of we'll leave it up to the municipality. So some that do plow, but not all of them do. So that's kind of something that, as we continue to put more paths on the road, we're going to have to continue to think about as well, as far as how we maintain year-round accessibility to these paths.
Joanne asked, is there a way to include information about the nearby bicycle repair shop? So something that we didn't touch on was the messaging and how that appears on these signs. Typically, we would like to keep it as generic as possible when we're directing to a private destination like a bike shop. However, that's not to mean that we cannot include some sort of symbol to allude to it, either on the guide signage or on the maps. The maps offer us a lot of flexibility to directing to more unique destinations. So that is not something that we've included here, but we can take a look at how to best represent those kind of destinations on signage through a easily identifiable icon. We have made some recommendations. There have been some discussion about some potential bike repair
Bike stations.
stations along the the path system, and those would be indicated on the maps as well. But yeah, that is definitely something we can continue to look in and include in our formal recommendations.
We got a question here from Chris asking, what are the next steps for the signage testing? When will the next corridor and where will it be installed? So I think we had a slide, I don't know if you could back up to it a little bit, Jeff. I think we had a slide that kind of showed next steps, at least for the study, from when we get from this test section to kind of completing the study, which will address maybe a couple of those, refinement of the wayfinding plan is probably the next key step. Once we get input from the survey, we want to go through, make any tweaks and modify the wayfinding plan and the signage itself, and then kind of finalize. And Corbin's going to create a kind of a county signage standards manual that we'll use to implement on our trail system. We haven't had the discussion yet in terms of next corridors. Obviously, we want to get it on the whole Lake County DOT network. But when we started the study, we had a lot more questions than answers. Like, can our sign shop implement it? What are the costs going to be? And we had to kind of figure some of those things out, which are still kind of in the works and in process with this test section. So once we get the standards manual up to date, I think the next step, maybe that's not shown on here, would then be for the DOT to kind of come up with like an implementation plan and start prioritizing some of these trails and getting that addressed. So to answer your question, we don't have an answer in terms of like the next corridor, but that will be coming.
And for the test route, we intend to keep the test signage and survey live for a couple months here to make sure that we are getting the feedback that we need to finalize all of this. We know that you have a vocal community that's very passionate about your bike trails. We saw that with just staggering numbers in our original session, our original survey. So we want to make sure that we're leaving it up long enough to make sure people have an opportunity to get out to this particular section, see it, experience it, and then take the time to take the survey.
Yeah, and then our evaluation also extends to receiving comments and kind of meeting back and getting input from the sign shop as to questions, concerns, and issues with the development of the signs. Now that they've gone through a manufacturing phase of developing this first segment, let's talk to them about challenges, issues, and questions, or things that they'd like to see incorporated into the system as well.
So I don't know, Jeff, did you have any more on the slides? Was there anything did we get through the deck yet, or
we did?
I know we got
we're
kind of jumping through the questions there. So
yep. Yeah, no, this was it. We really wanted to. We're ending here on the survey information slide. Want to make sure everyone gets this information down. But with any questions, I certainly could go back to any of the slides and expand or answer any additional questions. There's a question here about the flooding. That's exactly what these regulatory signs could do. So in the case of the regulatory sign we have here for the intersection, it was designed for a specific safety issue or problem that users will encounter. If there's current flooding or frequent flooding on a trail segment, potentially a sign like this regulatory sign could make people aware of that, could redirect them, as this writer has indicated, maybe even lets people know when segments are closed. There are ways of having a sign that is sort of an open and close in terms of, you see sometimes the stop signs that fold in half. Certainly we could have something like that if it's a segment that's open and closed or closed frequently.
And you're going to get tired of me saying this, but the map can do so much for us. We can even call out those sections, those specific sections that are prone to flooding on the map. We intend to call out the different conditions that you're going to run into. Is it gravel? Is it on road? So these maps, and this is not its final state right now, this is just, again, a segment of this, hold a lot of weight for us and can carry that information.
Looks like we have one more question from, let's see here. Yeah, we got one more here. Is there a timeline to when we'll get to the next test section? So this will be the only test section that's planned. The next steps will be implementing this permanently on the trail systems. As I mentioned a couple minutes ago, we have to figure out the implementation plan for that. So the goal was to kind of have our sign shop do this test section and see what level of effort and costs and things like that go into it. And then we want to come up with an implementation plan to roll this out countywide in our whole system. So we do have money in our program for that. So I would expect that that would be coming here in the near future, but we don't have like the next sections quite figured out yet. So, and then another one here from Michael, what list of criteria do you like to use in determining the strategic points for sign locations? I don't know if Corbin, if one of you guys want to take that one.
Want to do it, Maura?
Sure. So when we,
Maura knows this one because we did this. This is actually, we gathered information during the initial stakeholder meeting, and we had really good conversations about asking folks what they use.
So our initial meeting started with having people highlight what those access points are. How are they getting on the trails, whether it's a formal trailhead or an informal. So we look at those opportunities. And then we look at opportunities where a decision needs to be made. So do you need to understand that you need to go straight to continue on this trail, or if you turn right here, you're gonna head into downtown Libertyville. So we look at these decision points. That's what dictates where a lot of these directional type signs are. From there, right now, we're using mile markers every half mile out on the trail system. We want your feedback to know, is that too frequent? Is that not frequent enough? Should it be every quarter mile? So it's really looking at how people access it and when they need to make decisions that we're deciding where to put signs. I hope that helps a little bit.
And the destinations, the criteria for inclusion really is, we're trying to make this using a lot of landmark destinations. So you'll see a lot of, for directing to a downtown or a community or another landmark, something that people have a clear understanding when they arrive and what it is. Private destinations present challenges. So this is going to be mostly public destinations, similar to what you would see potentially in a vehicular program, right? DOT controls the number of destinations and what type of destinations occur. So we have a similar process.
A couple more questions from Elliot. Is the official jurisdiction for the specific remit along Lake County roads? So it's going to be, our goal is to get this on the Lake County trail system, but we did coordinate with our stakeholder groups, with a lot of municipalities and the forest preserves, and I think it was Maura that alluded to it earlier, is that the goal and what we heard from the stakeholders is that, well, you know, maybe individual stakeholders may want different things on the signage, maybe different elements or maybe different color schemes or something like that. There did seem like there was desire for coordination amongst the agencies. So maybe it's like, say, the Explore Lake County or certain elements, so you know that you're on a Lake County trail system. The goal of our study, though, was for it to guide signage on the Lake County DOT trail system. A couple more here. There's one here, John. I don't know if you would want to take this one. Have you looked at signage for road crossings, for bike paths, for better safety, such as like flashing lights?
Yeah, so we do, depends on the crossing. We usually look towards the municipality, and if they were on to help out with putting flashing lights in, as far as paying for the installing it and maintaining it, we'll do it as part of our project sometimes. And then we also look at how can we have people safely cross, and usually we try, if we can, send them to intersections, like we do at the sign, to a traffic signal. But we have locations where the safest way to cross is putting in a signal specifically for the path. So we have one of those up on Lewis Avenue right now. But the flashing lights we do put in, the Forest Preserve puts them in as well, and municipalities have them in.
And we have those regulatory signs designed in our system as well, the yellow ones that
Work
were
with those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a question I think someone might be confused about. We mentioned a map a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, currently on the test section, the kiosks have a map in them. They are basic test maps for the segment right now. We are currently contracted to develop a countywide trail map, which will have more detailed information on. That is not ready yet. We're still working on that, so it's not available. I don't have a time frame for that, but it'll probably coincide with our final recommendations and results. We'll
And the
provide that
intent, yeah, the intention for that map is then that is the consistent map that's being used on the website, the county website, that hopefully the municipalities would use if they're trying to get people to use the county system. It's a map that you would see in the environment. So once that is finalized, it would be our intention that that become readily available for the users.
In general, adding on to that, on our website, there's a lot of good information there too, just for existing maps, like our 2040 bike path or non-motorized plan, like Matt alluded to. If you go to Lake County Division of Transportation webpage under resources, it also has like our county highways and bikeways map too. So for existing information, that may be helpful to you. And again, we have a general email for bike requests. So if anyone has any general questions where to find some of these things or want some links or PDFs, we can send that out too. So that would be bike, B-I-K-E, at lakecountyil.gov.
All right, everyone. We got a ton of feedback, and we appreciate everyone that took the time to answer questions and present this study. If we did not get back to you during this meeting, please email bike@lakecountyil.gov. We will get back to you as soon as we can. I think we did a pretty good job of answering most questions, but we may have missed a few along the way. So we're right up at the 7 o'clock hour, so we're gonna wrap it up. So I just wanna thank everyone that participated throughout the event, and then our presenters too. You did a terrific job, and you know, for anyone that wants to review a recording of this meeting, it'll be posted right here on this Facebook page at all times. It'll render here probably within an hour or so, and then we'll post it on our website too. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll hope to see you guys again soon.